Hello YouTube, this is ChardarYuGiOh here with a deck tech for our Eldlich stun list that we played on YGO Omega Daily Duels. Starting off, we're playing 3 Inspector Border. We're playing Inspector Border because the theory of Eldlich, how this deck works and wins the game, is you want to trade resources with your opponent until you have more resources left, and then overwhelm them over time with card advantage. Now, one of the problems with this deck is a trap deck. We cannot use the majority of our cards until the second turn of the game. At that point, our opponent has 1 card more than we do because they draw 6 cards for their first turn, while we only draw 5. And most modern Yu-Gi-Oh cards generate their own card advantage. So we can set traps and trade our resources with our opponent. Usually we'll go +1, but it's not always easy to maintain control of the game. Inspector Border helps contribute to this game plan by effectively blanking a certain number of our opponent's cards. If we normal summon an Inspector Border and our opponent has a hand of Drytron monsters or a hand of Tri-Brigade monsters, cards that can't activate under Inspector Border, we have effectively taken away some of their card advantage. Now, they still have the cards in a literal sense, but the cards can't do anything. So we're playing 3 Inspector Border, which is really strong unless your opponent has either Infinite Impermanence or Forbidden Droplet, as we saw in our games. We're only playing 2 Golden Lord. We don't really want to draw this card because, again, this card doesn't do anything on the first turn of the game. But we still need to play 2 to maintain our resources. We're playing 2 Pot of Duality and 3 Pot of Prosperity. This list that we played had an Upstart Goblin. This is a conflict with Pot of Prosperity because you can't draw cards the turn you use Pot of Prosperity. I don't agree with this choice. Again, most of the decks I play on Daily Duels are submitted to me. I didn't do this. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have made this mistake, but I don't really agree with this. We play 1 White Destiny. Most Eldlich decks don't play White Destiny, which I am very fond of this card because, again, we're trying to get to a grind game and overwhelm our opponent with card advantage. And Eldlich of White Destiny helps you do that. If you're playing 1 more Eldlich card than your opponent in the mirror match, or this just gives you a resource when your opponent doesn't have one, I think this card is worth playing. We're playing 3 Cursed Eldland. This helps us get some card advantage to get an extra card each turn. This can help us overcome the problem of going first and only having 5 cards. Eldlich of Scarlet Sanguine, 3 of this. This is probably the best Eldlich card. This gets Golden Lord out of the deck, so you don't really want to draw it. It can also get it back from the graveyard. 3 Ice Dragon's Prison, just a very impactful trap card. 3 Torrential Tribute, another very impactful trap card. 2 Anti-Spell Fragrance. This card is very, very strong in this format. It's good against Sky Striker. It's good against Drytron. It's good against the various Dogmatica and Invoked decks. Those aren't as popular now as they were, but Anti-Spell is very impactful. Playing 3 Conquistador and 3 Haquero. These are the main disruptions that our deck sets up. Ideally, we'll have a hand of some impactful trap, Conquistador and Haquero and Scarlet, and this will just get a card out of our opponent's graveyard, get a card off our opponent's field, and then hopefully through some combination of our impactful traps, Inspector Border, and these disruptions, we can just keep our opponent off of their game plan long enough to let our card advantage matter and take control of the grind game. Imperial Order, another very impactful trap. Golden Land Forever, the Eldlich counter trap. This card is not as popular, but we do need to make sure that we protect our back row because we are playing a trap deck. We are soft to cards like Red Reboot, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Lightning Storm. Solemn Judgment for the same reason. This card can stop summons, but most often you'll want to save this to protect your back row. If we lose all of our traps, we kind of just die. This deck doesn't do anything. And lastly, Solemn Strike, a fairly popular trap this format to stop summons and monster effects. For the extra deck, we're playing duplicates of most of our good extra deck cards, because we're playing Pot of Prosperity, and we very rarely go into the extra deck with this deck anyway. We want to shut off all monster effects with Inspector Border. We're not trying to turn on things for our opponent. We're playing 2 Zeus, 1 Juggernaut, 2 Gustav, 2 Pleiades, Zeraboros, Soldier of Chaos, a Nightmare package, Imduk, and 2 Link Spider. I think Link Spider's probably the extra deck monster that comes up the most, because sometimes you just need to get Hakuero and Conquistador into the grave to use their effects. For the side deck, we are very much geared towards going first in the main deck, so our side deck is almost entirely based on going second. We have Nibiru's and Drawls, which are just very impactful hand traps that can keep our opponent from going off. One of the weaknesses of Eldlich is that we're not great at cracking boards. If our opponent sets up a board with multiple negates, we set a bunch of trap cards and then we die. Feather Duster and Lightning Storm for back row decks. Mystic Mines, if our opponent doesn't have negates but has a big board set up, we can just activate Mystic Mine and sit on it until we have a critical mass of cards that let us get through our opponent's board. And finally, Evenly Matched, mostly in here for Eldlich Mirrors, because banishing Eldlich cards face down is one of the only ways to get rid of them forever. That is the deck we played. Please let me know what you think of the list, what you think of these deck techs, and thank you for watching. Peace out, YouTube.